February 26th, 1941. Vickers Armstrongs Limited, Weybridge, England. Barnes Wallace stands in his cluttered office, staring at a problem that refuses to be solved. Around him, blueprints cover every available surface. Drawings of aircraft wings, fuselage cross-sections, stress calculations written in his precise engineer's hand. But today, none of that matters. Today, he's obsessing over something entirely different. How to destroy a dam. Not just damage it. Not crack it or weaken it. Destroy it completely. Breach it so catastrophically that millions of tons of water explode through the Ruhr Valley, flooding Germany's industrial heartland, crippling the factories that produce tanks and aircraft and ammunition for Hitler's war machine. The problem is that dams are built specifically not to be destroyed. Wallace circles his desk for the 100th time, running calculations in his head. The Mona Dam, his primary target, is a gravity dam. 40 meters high, 34 meters thick at the base, constructed of concrete and stone that could withstand a direct hit from the largest bombs the RAF currently possesses. Previous studies concluded that destroying it would require a 30,000-pound bomb dropped directly on the dam's crest from extreme altitude with impossible precision. 30,000 pounds. The RAF's heaviest bomber, the Lancaster, can carry 14,000 pounds maximum. And precision bombing from high altitude is a fantasy. Bombs dropped from 20,000 feet can miss their targets by hundreds of meters due to wind, air pressure variations, human error. It can't be done conventionally, Wallace mutters to himself, sketching another diagram on a pad already covered with failed concepts. Conventional bombing won't work. High level, low level, none of it works against a structure this massive. He's been circling this problem for months, ever since the Air Ministry asked him to investigate methods of attacking Germany's water infrastructure. Every conventional approach leads to the same dead end. Dams are simply too strong, too massive, too well designed to be destroyed by aerial bombardment, unless you attack them where they're vulnerable. Wallace stops circling, sits, stares at his latest sketch, a cross-section of the Mona Dam showing not just the structure itself, but the water behind it. Millions upon millions of tons of water pressing against the dam face with incredible hydrostatic pressure. The water, he whispers. The water is the weapon. The idea crystallizes with sudden clarity. You don't destroy a dam by hitting it from above. You destroy it by detonating a massive explosive charge against the dam's face underwater at a precise depth where the shockwave will shatter the structural integrity. The water itself, thousands of tons pressing against cracked concrete, will do the rest, forcing the breach wider until the entire dam collapses. But how do you place a bomb against a dam wall underwater? Torpedoes won't work. The Germans have protected the dams with anti-torpedo nets. Dropping a bomb into the reservoir won't work. It will sink to the bottom, too far from the dam face to cause catastrophic damage. Wallace pulls out a fresh sheet of paper and begins sketching furiously. The bomb needs to be delivered by aircraft, obviously. It needs to detonate at a specific depth against the dam wall, which means it needs to skip, he says aloud, his voice rising with excitement, like a stone skipping across a pond. The aircraft flies low, releases the bomb at the correct speed and altitude, and the bomb skips across the reservoir surface until it strikes the dam. Then it sinks down the dam face to the optimal depth and detonates. It sounds insane. Bombs don't skip, they fall. The idea violates every principle of conventional bombing tactics. Any engineer hearing it would dismiss it as the fantasy of a man who spent too long at his drafting table. But Barnes Wallace isn't any engineer. He's the man who designed the R-100 airship, who revolutionized geodetic aircraft construction, whose Wellington bomber is one of the RAF's workhorses. If anyone can make a bomb skip across water, it's him. He works through the night, filling pages with calculations, projectile physics, hydrodynamics, material stresses. The bomb needs to be cylindrical, not streamlined. A spinning cylinder will skip better than an aerodynamic shape. It needs to be released at exactly 60 feet altitude, at exactly 240 miles per hour, with backspin of 500 revolutions per minute to maintain stability during the skip. The margins for error are microscopic. Too high and the bomb will shatter on impact. Too low and it will dive into the water. Too fast and it will skip over the dam entirely. Too slow and it won't reach the target. The backspin must be precise. Too much and the bomb will curve off course. too little, and it will tumble. By dawn, Wallace has filled 17 pages with calculations and preliminary designs. He's also concluded that this weapon, if it can even be built, will be the most difficult aerial munition ever deployed. The pilots will need to fly at 60 feet altitude at night over enemy territory, maintain exact speed, release the weapon at a precise distance from the target, all while under heavy anti-aircraft fire. It's impossible, which is exactly why it might work. April 15th, 1942, Road Research Laboratory, Harmonsworth. The first test is almost comical in its simplicity. Wallace stands beside a large water tank, originally built for testing ship models, holding what looks like a child's marble. Except this marble is made of steel and weighs exactly 2 pounds, scaled down proportionally from his full-size bomb design. "You understand," says the laboratory director, a gray-haired physicist named Dr. Finch, who clearly thinks Wallace has lost his mind, "that what you're proposing violates basic principles of ballistics. Bombs fall, they don't skip." "Stones skip," Wallace replies calmly. "We've all skipped stones across ponds as children. This is simply the same principle scaled up and applied to ordnance delivery. The forces involved are precisely calculated." Wallace holds up his scaled model. The spin provides gyroscopic stability. The cylindrical shape creates the optimal contact angle with the water surface. The velocity and angle of release determine the number of skips before the projectile strikes the target. Dr. Finch sighs. "Very well, show me." Wallace positions himself at one end of the 200-foot tank. At the far end, assistants have erected a wooden barrier representing the dam face. The water is perfectly still, reflecting the laboratory's overhead lights like polished glass. Wallace winds up like a cricket bowler and hurls the steel sphere toward the water. It strikes the surface at a shallow angle, bounces once, twice, 3 times, each skip shorter than the last, and strikes the wooden barrier with a satisfying thunk before sinking. Dr. Finch stares. "I'll be damned." "That's 3 skips from a hand-thrown projectile with imperfect spin," Wallace says, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. "Imagine what we can achieve with a full-scale bomb dropped from an aircraft at precise velocity with controlled backspin. We could place a 10,000-pound charge directly against a dam wall at the exact depth required for maximum destructive effect." Over the following months, Wallace refines his design through hundreds of tests. He experiments with different shapes, different spin rates, different release parameters. He builds increasingly large models, graduating from steel marbles to 50-pound spheres to quarter-scale prototypes weighing 500 pounds. The bombs don't always cooperate. Some shatter on impact, the forces involved exceeding material tolerances. Some skip erratically, curving off in unexpected directions. Some dive immediately, the hydrodynamics wrong. Each failure teaches Wallace something new, pushes him to adjust his calculations, refine his design. By December 1942, he has a working prototype, a cylindrical bomb 60 inches long, 50 inches in diameter, weighing 9,250 pounds when filled with explosive. The bomb is fitted with a simple but ingenious mechanism, a belt-driven system that spins the bomb backward at 500 revolutions per minute before release, using a hydraulic motor powered by the aircraft's engines. The weapon is officially designated Upkeep. Unofficially, it's already being called the bouncing bomb. Now comes the truly impossible part, convincing the Royal Air Force to actually use it. February 22, 1943, RAF Bomber Command Headquarters, High Wycombe. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Bomber Harris listens to Barnes Wallace's presentation with the expression of a man being asked to believe in fairy tales. Harris is a hard man, a veteran of the First World War, a commander who measures success in tons of bombs dropped in square miles of German cities reduced to ash. He has no patience for eccentric inventors and their elaborate schemes. "Let me understand this clearly," Harris says when Wallace finishes his pitch. "You want me to divert 19 Lancaster bombers, some of my best aircraft, to form a special squadron. You want me to assign 133 of my best aircrew to train for a mission where they'll fly at 60 feet altitude at night over heavily defended targets. And you want them to drop a bomb that skips, like a stone across a pond." "Yes, sir, that's correct." "And this bomb of yours, this Upkeep device, hasn't been tested at full scale." "Not yet, sir. We're conducting final tests next month at Reculver, but the scaled models have performed flawlessly." "Scaled models," Harris's voice drips with contempt. Mr. Wallace, I'm fighting a war with the resources available to me. Every bomber I commit to your scheme is a bomber that's not attacking German industry, not destroying railway yards, not burning Hamburg and Cologne. You're asking me to gamble valuable assets on an untested weapon for a mission that might not even be possible. Wallace holds his ground. He's dealt with skeptical military men before. Sir, if Operation Chastise succeeds, if we breach the Möhne and Eder dams, we'll flood the Ruhr Valley. The Germans will lose electrical power, water supply, industrial capacity. The economic damage will exceed anything conventional bombing can achieve. One successful mission will accomplish more than months of area bombing. And if it fails, I've wasted 19 Lancasters and 133 trained men. Harris stands, signaling the meeting is over. Your bouncing bomb is an interesting curiosity, Mr. Wallace, but I don't fight wars with curiosities. Request denied. Wallace leaves the meeting devastated. Without RAF support, his weapon is useless. All the calculations, all the testing, all the brilliant engineering, meaningless if no one will actually use it. But Wallace isn't the only one who believes in the bouncing bomb. 2 weeks later, Air Vice Marshal Ralph Cochrane, commander of No. 5 Group, one of Bomber Command's most effective formations, contacts Wallace directly. Cochrane has read the technical reports, watched footage of the test drops, done his own analysis, and he believes the weapon can work. Harris won't support you officially, Cochrane tells Wallace during a quiet meeting away from headquarters. But I can. Give me one squadron, just 19 aircraft. I'll handpick the crews, give them the training time they need. If the weapon performs as you claim, we'll prove Harris wrong. If it fails, Cochrane shrugs, then I'll take responsibility for the failure. It's exactly the opening Wallace needs. With Cochrane's support, he gains access to resources, personnel, testing facilities. The bouncing bomb program shifts from theoretical curiosity to operational weapon. Now all he needs is someone capable of flying the impossible mission. March 24th, 1943, RAF Scampton, Lincolnshire. Wing Commander Guy Gibson is 24 years old, has flown 173 combat operations, and is thoroughly exhausted. He's been operational almost continuously since 1940, night fighters, bombers, pathfinders, and was expecting to be rotated to a training role where he could catch his breath and perhaps stop having nightmares about burning cities and dying crewmen. Instead, he's been summoned to Scampton to form a new squadron for an unspecified special operation. You'll have your pick of crews, Air Vice Marshal Cochrane tells him in the briefing room, any pilot, navigator, bomb aimer, engineer, gunner you want. The best men in Bomber Command. Your only limitation is time. You have 6 weeks to form the squadron and train them for the mission. What is the mission, sir? You'll be briefed when the time comes. For now, all you need to know is that you'll be flying Lancasters modified to carry a special weapon. You'll be attacking targets at extremely low altitude, 60 feet, at night. You'll need precision flying of a type never before attempted in combat. Gibson processes this. Low-level night flying and heavy bombers. It's insane. Lancasters are designed for high-altitude area bombing, not treetop hedge hopping. But he's been in the RAF long enough to know that when senior officers say special operation, they mean something important enough to justify the risks. How many aircraft, sir? 19, 3 formations. You'll need to recruit and train 133 men. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Gibson nods slowly. I'll need flight engineers who understand the Lancaster systems intimately. Navigators capable of dead-reckoning navigation at low altitude where landmarks flash past too quickly for conventional map reading. Bomb aimers with steady nerves and perfect timing. Gunners who won't panic when we're flying so low the tail wheel almost touches the ground. You'll have access to anyone you want. Just get them ready. Over the next 2 weeks, Gibson assembles what will become 617 Squadron, hand-picked from the best crews in Bomber Command. He recruits Flight Lieutenant John Hoppy Hopgood, a veteran bomber pilot with nerves of steel. Squadron leader Henry Maudsley, commander of No. 50 Squadron, known for his precise flying. Flight Lieutenant David Maltby, one of the youngest but most skilled pilots in the command. The crews begin training before they even know what they're training for. They practice low-level flying, skimming over the English countryside at 60 feet, learning to judge altitude by eye because that's the only way to do it at night. They practice formation flying, maintaining position while flying so low that mistakes mean instant death. They practice navigation at 240 miles per hour with the ground blurring past. Men die during training. On April 16th, Flight Sergeant Bill Howarth's Lancaster clips a tree during a low-level run and cartwheels into a field, killing all 7 crew instantly. The wreckage burns for hours. Gibson doesn't stop the training, can't stop it. The mission deadline is approaching, and every day of practice increases the chance of survival when they finally face the real thing. May 15th, 1943, RAF Scampton. The full briefing happens 72 hours before the mission. Gibson assembles the crews in a locked, guarded room and pulls back a curtain to reveal a massive aerial photograph of the Mona Dam. "Gentlemen," he says quietly, "this is your target." The room erupts in shocked murmuring. Everyone recognizes the Mona. It's one of the largest dams in Germany, holding back 140 million cubic meters of water. Attacking it seems impossible. Destroying it seems like fantasy. Barnes-Wallace steps forward, and for the next hour, he explains the weapon, the bouncing bomb, the precise release parameters, the expected results. The bomb must be dropped at exactly 60 feet altitude, Wallace explains, using diagrams and models, exactly 425 yards from the dam wall, at exactly 240 miles per hour with exactly 500 revolutions per minute backspin. If any of these parameters are wrong, the weapon will fail. A pilot named Mickey Martin raises his hand. "How do we know we're at 60 feet altitude at night?" "Spotlights," Wallace replies. He shows them a diagram of 2 spotlights mounted under the Lancaster, one in the nose, one in the tail, angled so their beams converge on the water surface at exactly 60 feet altitude. When the spots of light merge into a figure-8 pattern on the water, you're at the correct height. And the distance to the dam? A simple bomb sight calibrated for the specific dimensions of the target. When the dam towers align with the sight marks, you're at 425 yards. Release the weapon, and physics does the rest. It's brilliantly simple and impossibly complex simultaneously. Every parameter must be perfect. There's no margin for error. "The Mona is defended," Gibson adds, pointing to intelligence photographs showing anti-aircraft positions on the dam and surrounding hills. "Light and heavy flak. They'll be shooting at you while you make your run. You'll be flying straight and level, at low altitude, at constant speed. The easiest target they'll ever have." The room is silent. Every man understands what he's being asked to do: fly into concentrated anti-aircraft fire while maintaining impossible precision, hoping a weapon that's never been used in combat actually works. "Questions?" Gibson asks. Flight Lieutenant Les Munro, a New Zealander with a dry sense of humor, raises his hand. "Do we get danger pay for this, sir?" The room erupts in laughter, tension breaking, fear transmuted into gallows humor. These men are professional bomber crews. They've flown through flak before, watched friends die, seen aircraft explode. This mission is more dangerous than most, yes, but it's also the most important thing they'll ever do. "One more thing," Wallace says quietly. "The weapon works. I know it sounds impossible. I know the margin for error is microscopic, but the mathematics are sound, the testing has been thorough, and if you execute this correctly, you will destroy that dam. You'll strike a blow against Germany that conventional bombing could never achieve." Gibson looks at his crews, young men, most of them in their early 20s, some barely old enough to drink legally. They're volunteers, every one. They could refuse this mission, accept reassignment, live longer. None of them will. Because that's what being in Bomber Command means in 1943. You fly the missions, you trust the equipment, you do your job. "We go in 3 nights, Gibson says, May 16th if weather permits. Waves of 3 aircraft attacking the Mona Dam in succession. Once the Mona is breached, we move to secondary targets, the Eder and Sorp dams. We keep attacking until all weapons are expended or all targets are destroyed." "Or until we're all dead," someone mutters. "Or until we're all dead," Gibson acknowledges, "which is why we're going to practice this 2 more times. We're going to fly these runs until you can do them in your sleep, because on the night, there won't be time to think, only to execute." They practice and practice and practice, until flying at 60 feet altitude feels natural, until judging distance to target becomes instinctive, until the entire crew works as a single organism, pilot holding altitude and speed, bomb aimer calling corrections, navigator tracking position, gunners scanning for threats, flight engineer monitoring every dial and gauge. By May 16th, they're as ready as they'll ever be, which means they're ready to attempt the impossible. May 16th, 1943, 21:28 hours, RAF Scampton. The 19 Lancasters of 617 Squadron sit on the hardstand like sleeping dragons, their matte black fuselages absorbing the last light of a spring evening. Beneath each aircraft hangs the bouncing bomb, officially upkeep, unofficially the weapon that shouldn't exist. A dark cylinder that looks wrong somehow, unbalanced, like someone attached an oversized barrel to the bomber's belly. Guy Gibson walks the line of aircraft, checking each one personally. He's wearing his dress uniform despite regulations. If he's going to die tonight, he'll die looking proper. His crew is already aboard G. George, running through pre-flight checks, testing systems, waiting for the order to start engines. At each aircraft, Gibson exchanges a few words with the pilot. With Mickey Martin, the Australian whose crew has practiced the attack run more than any other. "See you at the Mona, Mickey." With David Maltby, barely 23 years old, looking impossibly young in the cockpit. "Stick close, David, watch for my signal." With Hoppy Hopgood, his friend, his wingman on dozens of operations. "Don't do anything stupid, Hoppy." A wan smile. "Define stupid, sir." They all know the statistics. In Bomber Command, the odds of surviving a 30-operation tour are roughly 1 in 4. Most crews don't make it past their 10th mission. And this mission, flying at treetop level over heavily defended German territory to attack targets protected by concentrated anti-aircraft fire, has odds much worse than that. Gibson doesn't tell them what he calculated privately. He expects to lose half the squadron, 9 or 10 aircraft, 60-odd men. But if even 3 bombs hit the Mona, if the dam breaches, if the Ruhr floods, those 60 deaths will save hundreds of British lives by shortening the war. It's cold mathematics, the kind that keeps commanders awake at night. "All aircraft prepare for engine start," crackles over the radio. "Operation Chastise is go." I repeat, Operation Chastise is go. Gibson climbs aboard G. George, settles into the pilot's seat, begins the familiar ritual of starting 4 Merlin engines. Around the field, 76 engines cough to life, their combined roar drowning out thought. The Lancasters taxi, one by one, to the runway threshold, sorting themselves into 3 waves. Wave 1, 9 aircraft led by Gibson, will attack the Mona Dam. Wave 2, 5 aircraft, will attack the Eder Dam if the Mona is breached, or reinforce the Mona attack if needed. Wave 3, 5 aircraft, will attack the Sorp Dam and other secondary targets. At 21:39 hours, Gibson releases the brakes and G. George accelerates down the runway, heavy with fuel and the 9,250-pound weapon hanging below. The tail comes up. The bomber lifts reluctantly into the air, climbing slowly, the bouncing bomb creating drag that the Lancaster's designers never anticipated. Behind him, the other aircraft follow at 1-minute intervals. Martin, Hopgood, Young, Maltby, Shannon, Maudsley, Knight, Estelle. 9 bombers carrying weapons that might work or might fail catastrophically, crewed by men who volunteered for a mission they only partially understand. The formation sets course southeast, heading for the Dutch coast at 500 feet altitude, high enough to clear obstacles, low enough to stay under German radar coverage. The sun is setting behind them, painting the English countryside in shades of gold and amber. Beautiful. Gibson tries to remember it, store the image away, because he's not sure he'll see England again. The navigator, Pilot Officer Torger Tarum, a Canadian with an uncanny sense of direction, calls course corrections every few minutes. "Steer 135, ETA Dutch coast, 42 minutes. His voice is calm, professional, but Gibson knows Tarum well enough to hear the tension underneath. Flight Lieutenant Bob Hutchison, the wireless operator, monitors radio traffic. "Pathfinders are active over Cologne, main force attacking Dortmund, lots of chatter. The diversionary raids designed to draw German night fighters away from 617 Squadron's route. Hopefully, they cross the North Sea in darkness. Below, the water is black as ink, featureless. Gibson maintains 240 miles per hour, the speed they'll need for the weapon release. The Lancaster handles oddly with the bomb attached, heavy in the nose, sluggish in turns, but he's practiced enough to compensate. "Dutch coast ahead," Tarum announces. 2 minutes. Gibson drops to 100 feet, skimming the wave tops. The other aircraft follow, spreading into loose formation. They cross the coast near the Scheldt estuary, thundering over Dutch villages at rooftop height, their passage marked by anti-aircraft fire that bursts behind them. Too slow, too inaccurate to hit bombers moving this fast, this low. Then they're over occupied Holland, following a carefully planned route that avoids known flak concentrations. The landscape blurs past, canals reflecting moonlight, farmhouses, windmills, roads. Gibson watches for landmarks, comparing them to the maps he's memorized. A distinctive church steeple, a railway junction, a river bend. Behind him, someone isn't so lucky. "Aircraft down!" The call comes over the radio, tense and urgent. Mother hit by flak. She's burning!" Gibson cranes around, sees orange flame in the darkness behind him. Flight Lieutenant Robert Barlow's Lancaster, struck by light anti-aircraft fire, cartwheeling into a field in a shower of sparks. The bouncing bomb detonates on impact, a white flash visible for miles. All 7 crew killed instantly. 8 aircraft now. 1 down, and they haven't even reached Germany. They press on, deeper into enemy territory. The route takes them between German radar stations, through gaps in the defense network that intelligence has identified. It's a calculated risk. If the intelligence is wrong, if the Germans have repositioned their assets, the entire formation could be annihilated before reaching the target. At 22:45 hours, Flight Lieutenant Bill Astell's P-Popsy flies into high-tension power lines stretched across a valley. The Lancaster disintegrates, one wing shearing off, the fuselage cartwheeling into the ground. Another flash, another 7 men dead, 7 aircraft. Gibson says nothing over the radio, can't say anything. Acknowledging the losses will only demoralize the survivors. He maintains course, maintains speed, flies on through darkness toward the Ruhr Valley where the Mona Dam waits. At 0:15 hours, they cross into the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heartland, the most heavily defended airspace in Europe. Searchlights sweep the sky. Anti-aircraft fire erupts in curtains of tracer. Gibson weaves between the lights, using terrain to mask his approach, following valleys and riverbeds where the landscape provides cover. "There!" Taram's voice rises with excitement. "Dead ahead! The Mona!" Gibson sees it, a massive concrete wall stretching across a valley, white stone almost luminescent in the moonlight. Behind it, the reservoir spreads like a dark mirror, beautiful and terrible. The target. "All aircraft, this is G. George. We're starting attack runs. Formation as briefed. Follow me in." Gibson's voice is steady despite his hammering heart. "Good luck, chaps." He banks left, circling away from the dam to set up his approach run. Below, the landscape is a patchwork of forests, fields, and small villages. Ahead, the Mona Dam glows in the moonlight, its towers and spillways clearly visible. Gibson levels the aircraft, drops to exactly 60 feet using the spotlight altimeters Barnes Wallis designed. The 2 beams of light, one from the nose, one from the tail, cast oval patterns on the water surface. When the ovals merge into a figure 8, he's at perfect altitude. "Speed?" Gibson asks. 240, Flight Engineer John Pulford responds. "Holding steady." "Spot on," confirms bomb aimer pilot officer Frederick Spafford, peering through his bomb sight at the approaching dam. The towers on either end of the dam wall provide perfect aiming points. When they align with the sight marks, release the bomb. Simple in theory, impossible in practice with flak bursting around you. The anti-aircraft guns open fire. Tracer rounds arc up from positions on the dam towers and surrounding hills, 20mm and 37mm cannon, firing at a target they can see clearly, silhouetted against the lighter sky. Shells burst around G. George, close enough that Gibson can hear the crack, crack, crack of explosions over the roar of engines. "Steady," Spafford calls, tracking the target. "Steady, steady." Gibson holds the Lancaster rock steady, despite every instinct screaming at him to jink, to evade, to survive. But evasion means missing. Missing means wasting the weapon. Wasting the weapon means men died for nothing. Red tracers stream past the cockpit. Something strikes the port wing with a metallic clang. An instrument panel shatters. Gibson doesn't flinch. "Bomb gone." Spafford presses the release. The bouncing bomb drops from its shackles, spinning backward at 500 revolutions per minute, and strikes the water 425 yards from the dam. The bomb skips. Gibson watches in his mirror as the cylinder bounces across the reservoir surface like a flat stone thrown by a giant, one skip, two, three, before striking the dam wall and sinking down its face. The bomb is designed to roll down the concrete until it reaches 30 feet depth, where hydrostatic pressure triggers the fuse. "Bomb's in," Spafford shouts. "Clean strike." Gibson hauls the Lancaster into a hard climbing turn, engine screaming, escaping the killing zone. Behind him, seconds tick past. 5, 10, 15. The bomb detonates. Even a mile away, the explosion is staggering. A massive column of water erupts from the reservoir, climbing hundreds of feet into the air, illuminated from within by the white flash of 6,600 pounds of Torpex explosive. The shockwave ripples across the surface, creating waves that slam against the dam wall with tremendous force. Gibson circles back, straining to see through the spray and smoke. Has the dam breached? He can't tell. The wall is obscured by the water column, by debris, by the chaos of the explosion. George to all aircraft. Cannot confirm breach. Mother, you're next. Good luck, Hoppy." Flight Lieutenant John Hopgood lines up Mother for the attack run, his crew tense and ready. They've practiced this dozens of times. They know the parameters. They just have to execute. Mother drops to 60 feet, accelerates to 240 miles per hour, aims for the dam. The anti-aircraft guns, now fully alerted, fully manned, fully prepared, open fire with murderous intensity. Hopgood's Lancaster flies straight into a wall of flak. Tracers rip through the aircraft's port side, shredding aluminum skin, severing hydraulic lines, igniting fuel. The port wing erupts in flames. Mother staggers, loses altitude, but Hopgood holds the course with superhuman effort, fighting the controls as his aircraft disintegrates around him. "Bomb aimer, release when ready." Hopgood's voice over the radio, strained but controlled. The bomb aimer, Pilot Officer John Fraser, releases early, knowing they won't survive long enough to reach optimal range. The bomb skips once, twice, strikes the dam wall too high, bounces over the parapet, and explodes on the power station beyond the dam. Huge flash, secondary explosions, but the dam wall holds. Mother is hit!" someone shouts over the radio. "She's burning!" Hopgood tries to gain altitude, tries to give his crew a chance to bail out. The Lancaster climbs to 500 feet before the port wing tears completely off. The bomber rolls inverted and plunges into the ground 3 miles from the dam. 2 crew members, Fraser and rear gunner Pilot Officer Anthony Bircher, manage to bail out before impact. They'll survive, be captured, spend the rest of the war as POWs. The other 5 crew members, including Hopgood, die in the crash. Gibson watches his friend die, feels something cold and hard crystallize in his chest. Grief can wait. Right now, he has a mission to complete. "P. Popsy, you're up. Attack when ready." Flight Lieutenant Mickey Martin brings P. Popsy in fast and low, his Australian crew precise as clockwork. The anti-aircraft fire is intense. The German gunners are experienced now, tracking the Lancasters with deadly accuracy. Shells burst all around Martin's aircraft, but he holds course. "Bomb gone!" The weapon skips perfectly. 1, 2, 3 bounces, strikes the dam wall, and sinks. Martin banks hard, climbing away as the bomb detonates. Another massive explosion, another column of water, another shockwave, hammering the dam. Gibson circles, desperate to see results. The spray begins to clear. And there, yes, a crack in the dam face. Visible even from a distance, a dark line running down the concrete wall. Not a breach, not yet, but definite damage.
"We're hurting it," Gibson transmits. "Keep hitting it. A. Apple, you're next."
Squadron leader Henry Young in A. Apple makes his run, drops his bomb with textbook precision. The weapon skips, strikes, sinks, detonates. The crack in the dam widens. Then David Maltby in J. Johnny. Another perfect run, another explosion.
And suddenly, impossibly, the dam begins to fail.
The crack widens into a gap. Water pressure, millions of tons of hydrostatic force, tears at the weakened concrete. The gap becomes a breach. The breach becomes a collapse. A section of the dam wall 30 meters wide simply disintegrates, and the reservoir behind it explodes through the opening. 140 million cubic meters of water, enough to fill 50,000 Olympic swimming pools, roars through the breach in a wave 30 feet high. The wave crashes down the Ruhr Valley, gathering speed, growing larger, destroying everything in its path. Gibson watches in awe as the flood spreads across the valley floor. Villages disappear under the surge, bridges collapse, railways are torn up like ribbon, factories vanish beneath brown water. The destruction is total, absolute, biblical. George to all aircraft. Mona Dam is breached. I repeat, Mona Dam is breached. Wave 2, proceed to Eder Dam. Outstanding work, chaps. Outstanding. His voice is calm, professional. Inside, he's shaking. They actually did it. The impossible weapon worked. The impossible mission succeeded. Barnes-Wallace was right. But the cost? 5 aircraft remain from Wave 1. 4 have been lost. Barlow, Estelle, Hopgood, and Young's A-Apple, which was shot down by flak during the Mona attack. 28 men dead, and the night isn't over. Gibson leads the survivors toward the Eder Dam, 70 miles to the southeast. They arrive at 0139 hours to find the target shrouded in mist, difficult to see, even harder to attack. The Eder sits in a narrow valley surrounded by hills, making the approach run a nightmare of terrain avoidance. Flight Lieutenant David Shannon makes the first attempt, lining up his run only to abort at the last second when mist obscures the target. He circles, tries again, aborts again. On his third attempt, he drops his bomb successfully. Perfect skip, perfect strike, massive explosion. But when the spray clears, the dam still stands. Henry Maudslay and Z Zebra makes his run. The bomb releases late, strikes the dam parapet, and detonates prematurely. Z Zebra, caught directly above the explosion, is blown to pieces. All 7 crew killed. Les Knight in N-Nuts makes the final attack. His bomb skips perfectly, strikes true, detonates at optimal depth. The Eder Dam, already damaged by Shannon's bomb, cracks, fails, and collapses. Another massive flood roars down another valley, destroying more factories, more infrastructure, more of Germany's industrial capacity. 2 dams breached, 5 aircraft lost. But the mission is a success beyond anything Bomber Command imagined possible. May 17th, 1943, 0300 hours, Ruhr Valley, Germany. Wilhelm Schaefer is 73 years old, a retired steelworker who's lived in the village of Niederenz, 6 kilometers downstream from the Mona Dam, for his entire life. He's survived 2 wars, the Spanish flu, the hyperinflation of the 1920s, and the Depression. He's seen floods before, spring floods when the Mona River runs high with snowmelt. But he's never seen anything like this. The roar wakes him at 0317 hours, a sound like continuous thunder, growing louder every second. His wife Greta is already at the window, and what she sees makes her scream. A wall of water 30 feet high is racing down the valley toward their village, moving at 40 kilometers per hour, destroying everything in its path. In the moonlight, Schaefer can see entire trees tumbling in the surge, along with pieces of buildings, vehicles, livestock, bodies. The flood is brown with churned earth, white with foam, black with debris. "Run!" Schaefer grabs his wife's hand. "To the church! High ground!" But there isn't time. The village of Niederense sits on relatively flat terrain beside the river. The church is 200 meters away. The flood is moving at the speed of an automobile. They make it to the door before the water hits. The surge slams into their house with the force of a freight train, tearing the structure off its foundation. Walls collapse. The roof caves in. Schaefer loses his grip on Greta's hand, feels himself swept away by brown water, tumbling, drowning, his 73-year-old body battered by debris. A timber strikes his head. Everything goes dark. He wakes hours later, hanging from a tree branch 3 kilometers downstream, battered and broken, but alive. Greta is gone. The village is gone. Everything is gone, replaced by a landscape of mud and wreckage that extends as far as he can see. Niederenz is just one village. The Mona flood affects dozens. The wave spreads across the Ruhr Valley, following the natural contours of the river system, branching into tributaries and overflow channels. Entire towns disappear under the surge. Himmelpforten, Güne, Neheim. The cities of Wicked and Frundenberg are partially destroyed, their industrial districts flooded, their populations scattered. The death toll is catastrophic. In the immediate path of the flood, survival is impossible. People sleeping in their homes are drowned before they can wake. Those who try to flee on foot are overtaken by the surge. Some climb to upper floors or rooftops and survive. Most don't. The industrial damage is precisely what Barnes-Wallis predicted. The Ruhr Valley is Germany's manufacturing heartland, dense with steel mills, armament factories, chemical plants, power stations. The flood destroys or damages 7 railway bridges, severing north-south transportation routes. The Herdeck coal-fired power station, eliminating electrical generation for 400 square kilometers. The Hoche Steel Works at Wicked, which produced armor plating for panzer tanks. 6 major roadways, complicating military logistics. Dozens of smaller factories producing components for aircraft, submarines, and artillery. The water also contaminates the region's water supply. The Möhne Reservoir provided drinking water and industrial process water for much of the Ruhr. With the dam breached, cities must ration water, restrict industrial operations, and truck in supplies from distant sources. By dawn on May 17th, the Ruhr Valley has been transformed. What was Germany's most productive industrial region has become a disaster zone requiring massive emergency response. Wehrmacht troops are diverted from frontline duties to assist with rescue and recovery. Precious resources, equipment, materials, labor, are committed to rebuilding infrastructure instead of building tanks and aircraft. The strategic impact is exactly what Bomber Command hoped for. Disruption on a scale that conventional bombing could never achieve. May 17th, 1943, 0615 hours, RAF Scampton. Guy Gibson brings G. George in for landing as the sun rises over Lincolnshire, exhausted beyond measure, running on adrenaline and the fumes of fuel tanks nearly empty. His crew is silent, each man processing what they've witnessed, what they've accomplished, what they've lost. The debriefing takes hours. Intelligence officers ask questions, mark maps, calculate damage assessments. Gibson recounts each attack run in methodical detail, who dropped where, what happened, which aircraft were lost. His voice is steady, professional, but his hands shake when he lights a cigarette. 8 aircraft lost, 11 returned. Of the 133 men who took off the previous night, 53 are dead. 53, a casualty rate of 40% on a single mission. But the dams are breached, the Ruhr is flooded, the mission succeeded. Barnes-Wallis arrives at Scampton mid-morning, driven up from his laboratory in a staff car. He looks like a man who hasn't slept, which he hasn't, having spent the entire night at RAF command monitoring radio reports, calculating probable effects, waiting to hear if his weapon worked. Gibson meets him on the tarmac, still in his flight suit, streaked with oil and hydraulic fluid. "It worked," Gibson says simply. "Your bomb worked exactly as you said it would. Möhne breached, Eder breached. We put the weapons exactly where they needed to be, and the dams came down." Wallace's eyes fill with tears, relief, pride, grief, all mixing together in the complicated emotions of a man who built a weapon specifically to kill and destroy. The crews? How many? 8 aircraft lost, 53 men. Gibson's voice hardens. Every one of them a volunteer. Every one of them brave beyond measure. They died proving your mathematics correct. "I'm sorry. I'm so terribly sorry." Wallace seems to crumple, the weight of those deaths settling on his shoulders. "I knew the mission would be dangerous, but I hoped—" "Don't." Gibson cuts him off. "Don't apologize for giving us a weapon that works. Those men died doing something important, something that might shorten this war. That's more than most bomber crews get. Most of us die burning cities, killing civilians, accomplishing strategic objectives we can barely see. But last night we hit a target that mattered, with a weapon that worked, and we saw the results with our own eyes." It's the most emotion Gibson has shown since landing. Then he composes himself, becomes the professional officer again. "The Air Ministry wants to see you. They're calling it the greatest bombing raid of the war. There will be medals, promotions, publicity. Congratulations, Mr. Wallace. You're about to become very famous." Over the following days, the full scale of the Dambusters raid becomes clear. Reconnaissance photographs show the breached dams, the flooded valleys, the destroyed infrastructure. German radio broadcasts, monitored by British intelligence, report massive casualties and damage, though they downplay the strategic significance. The British press celebrates the raid as a triumph of British ingenuity and courage. Newspapers run front-page stories about the bouncing bomb, the brave crews, the devastating damage to Germany's war machine. The propaganda value is immense. Proof that Britain can strike back, can hurt Germany, can innovate and overcome. But the Air Ministry also analyzes the costs. 8 Lancasters lost represents a loss rate of 42%, unsustainably high for regular operations. 53 dead aircrew represents the loss of highly trained specialists who took years to replace. If every mission had casualties like Chastise, Bomber Command would be destroyed in months. The conclusion is unavoidable. The bouncing bomb, for all its brilliance, is a specialized weapon for specific targets. It cannot be deployed routinely. The costs are too high. June 22nd, 1943. Führer Hauptquartier, Rastenburg, East Prussia. Adolf Hitler stares at damage assessments from the Ruhr Valley with the expression of a man confronting an unexpected defeat. The reports are catastrophic. 2 major dams destroyed, 1,600 German civilians dead, including 1,000 forced laborers and POWs housed in the flood zone. Industrial production disrupted across the entire region. How? Hitler demands. How did the British do this? Our intelligence said the dams were invulnerable to aerial attack. You assured me. He rounds on Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe. You assured me that our dams were protected by geography and anti-aircraft defenses. Göring, sweating despite the cool room temperature, stammers through an explanation. Mein Führer, the British used a new weapon, a bomb that skips across water like a stone. Our defenses were positioned for conventional high-level bombing. We didn't anticipate low-level attacks. Then you failed in your duty to anticipate. Hitler's voice rises to a scream. While you've been assuring me the Luftwaffe controls the skies, the British have been developing weapons that make our defenses irrelevant. First, they burn Hamburg with incendiaries. Now they breach our dams with bouncing bombs. What's next? What other surprises have you failed to anticipate? The meeting deteriorates into Hitler raging about British technology, German incompetence, and the need for retaliation. Orders go out. Increase anti-aircraft defenses around remaining dams. Develop countermeasures to prevent future bouncing bomb attacks. Prioritize reconstruction of the Möhne and Idar dams. But the resources required for these measures are resources diverted from other priorities. Every anti-aircraft gun positioned to defend a dam is a gun not defending cities or factories. Every worker rebuilding dams is a worker not building tanks. Every engineering asset committed to defense is an asset not committed to offense. The Dambusters raid doesn't just destroy dams. It forces Germany to allocate massive resources to preventing similar attacks. It's a strategic victory that compounds over time. August 1943. Rebuilding efforts begin. Reconstructing the Möhne and Idar dams becomes a top priority for the Nazi regime. Not just for practical reasons, the Ruhr needs water and power, but for propaganda purposes. Allowing the dams to remain breached would be admitting British superiority, acknowledging defeat. 7,000 workers are mobilized for the reconstruction effort. Most are forced laborers, French POWs, impressed workers from occupied territories, concentration camp inmates. They work 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, under SS supervision that tolerates no delays. The engineering challenge is immense. The breaches aren't clean breaks that can be simply repaired. They're catastrophic failures where entire sections of dam wall were torn away by explosive force and water pressure. Rebuilding requires
Excavating millions of cubic meters of debris from the breach zones.
constructing massive cofferdams to hold back remaining water while repairs proceed, pouring tens of thousands of tons of concrete in precise forms, installing new sluice gates, spillways, and control mechanisms, testing and validating the repaired structures under load. The Möhne Dam is repaired by September 1944, 16 months after the raid. The Idar takes even longer, not being fully operational until 1945. By that time, Germany is collapsing, the war is lost, and the dam's industrial capacity is largely irrelevant. The cost of reconstruction in materials, labor, and diverted resources far exceeds the cost of the original raid. Bomber Command spent 8 Lancasters and 53 men to inflict damage that required 7,000 workers 16 months to repair. By any measure of military efficiency, it's an extraordinary return on investment. May 1944, RAF Scampton. Guy Gibson is dead, killed on a night bombing mission over the Netherlands 6 months after the dams raid. He was awarded the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military decoration, for leading Operation Chastise, along with numerous other honors. He was 25 years old. Of the 133 men who flew on the dam's raid, 34 will die before the war ends, killed in combat operations, training accidents, or as POWs. The survivors will carry the memory of that night for the rest of their lives. Barnes-Wallis continues his work, developing other specialized weapons, including the Tallboy and Grand Slam earthquake bombs that destroy hardened targets conventional munitions cannot touch. He'll be knighted after the war, recognized as one of Britain's greatest engineers. But he'll never fully reconcile himself to the deaths his weapons cause, the human cost of innovation in warfare. The bouncing bomb itself is never used operationally again. The specific conditions required for its employment, large, static targets with water approaches, defendable by specialized tactics, rarely occur. The weapon was perfect for one mission, and that mission has been completed. But the legacy extends far beyond a single night in May 1943. Post-war assessment. Military historians will debate Operation Chastise for decades. Some argue it was a brilliant success, a perfectly executed precision strike that destroyed critical infrastructure and demonstrated British technological superiority. Others argue it was a costly stunt, high casualties for limited strategic impact, the dams rebuilt within 18 months, the industrial disruption temporary. Both perspectives contain truth. The immediate physical damage was significant, but not war-winning. The Ruhr Valley's industrial capacity was disrupted, not destroyed. Production resumed, albeit at reduced levels, within weeks. The dams were rebuilt. The floods, while devastating, didn't cripple Germany's war machine. But the psychological and strategic impacts were profound. Propaganda value. The raid demonstrated that Britain could strike back against Germany with precision and innovation. At a time when the war's outcome was uncertain, when Britain had suffered years of setbacks and defeats, the dam's raid provided proof that British engineering and British courage could match anything Germany fielded. Resource diversion. Germany was forced to allocate massive resources to defending against future bouncing bomb attacks, resources that could have been used elsewhere. Thousands of workers rebuilt dams instead of building tanks. Hundreds of anti-aircraft guns defended water infrastructure instead of defending cities or military installations. Morale. Impact. On Germany, the raid was devastating. If the British could breach the supposedly invulnerable dams, what else could they do? German civilian morale, already strained by years of war, suffered another blow. Conversely, British morale soared. The Dambusters became national heroes, symbols of British resilience and ingenuity. Technological innovation. The raid proved that unconventional weapons, properly developed and deployed, could achieve results impossible with conventional munitions. This lesson influenced weapons development for the rest of the war and beyond, from Wallace's earthquake bombs to modern precision-guided munitions. May 17, 1968, 25th anniversary commemoration. The remaining Dambusters gather at RAF Scampton for a memorial service. There are fewer than 40 of them now, the survivors of the survivors, men in their 50s and 60s, graying and balding, but still carrying themselves with the bearing of military aircrew. They stand before a memorial listing the 53 names of those who died on Operation Chastise. Young men, most of them. The average age was 22. Volunteers who flew an impossible mission with an impossible weapon and made it work. Barnes-Wallis is there, 81 years old now, leaning on a cane. He reads a brief statement. The bouncing bomb was a triumph of mathematics and engineering, but the success of Operation Chastise was a triumph of human courage. Those 53 men died, proving that innovation, properly applied and bravely executed, can overcome obstacles that seem insurmountable. They died, shortening a war that might have lasted years longer without their sacrifice. We remember them not as victims, but as heroes who chose to attempt the impossible and succeeded. The gathered survivors salute the memorial. Some are crying. All are remembering that night 25 years ago when they flew at 60 feet altitude through German flak, dropped bombs that skipped across water, and watched dams collapse in massive explosions. They called it an impossible bomb. They said it couldn't work, that the physics were wrong, that the mission was suicide. But one night in May 1943, 19 Lancaster bombers proved the impossible was merely difficult. They destroyed dams that were supposed to be invulnerable. They flooded valleys that were supposed to be safe. They struck a blow against Nazi Germany that resonated far beyond the physical damage. 8 aircraft didn't return. 53 men died. The cost was terrible, but they destroyed the dams. They proved the weapon worked. They showed that courage and innovation, combined with precise execution, can accomplish what seems impossible. The Mona and Ader dams stand today, rebuilt and operational. But the memory of the night they fell remains, a testament to human ingenuity, to desperate courage, to the terrible beauty of engineering applied to destruction. They called it an impossible bomb, until one night it destroyed an entire dam and changed warfare forever.